That's a headlight. That's horn. That's a headlight. So this 3D printed ring is kind of the nice final touch for some beautification. It's maybe a little bit more orange than the factory stuff. And you want to do the hatch pattern or a zigzag pattern, and then once you've sprayed, do not touch it for 24 hours at least. Don't try and install it right away. Back here on Eric's 85, and left off with getting the vintage air unit pretty much all installed in terms of the evaporator, HVAC unit, all that assembly, and the condenser is in here, but there is no receiver dryer as of yet, and a few last little things. And the reason for that is there's the wiring for the unit that goes to the engine bay, pressure switch, power, all that other good stuff. And that really just opened up a full can of worms, as you can see right here. Now, beforehand, I had that harness all wrapped up with my Alex Tech, and I've since ripped it all off because I did not like having this harness over the strut tower in the factory location, and all this wiring and guck was just, it was an eyesore when I had it together. I talked a little bit about this on the members only live, and I was like, you know what, I'm just not happy with it. So I started cutting the harness open to see what needs to stay, what can go, and there is quite a bit of wiring surrounding the alternator, which is kind of all this stuff here, and you can see a big loop. And I'm gonna have to get a main power terminal on this guy so that it'll power up all of that thick yellow gauge wire for the car. And the main reason for that is because, well, we've switched to single wire, just one big main wire alternator here, which that's all run. I've also gone ahead and got the oil sending unit and a factory style sending unit down there. So I got to tap into some of these wires and figure out what I need here. I've already got this guy, so we need some hots. We need some hots for the coil. We need hot for the side of the carburetor, which I'm sure is related to the choke. And what else do we need? The tack, so that way we can maintain all of our factory gauges inside the car, plus the 2 autometer gauges that will be down in the center console. So I'm just evaluating what's going on here. I am going to have to cut this and splice into it, so I'm thinking I'm probably gonna cut, man, that's a crazy loop there as well. Okay, so I'm thinking I'm gonna cut the harness right around here, that way I don't have that many wires to connect. It's really just headlights, horn, parking lights, not too much stuff. So if I cut it there, the rest of this stuff, all right, will kind of get bundled up, and hopefully it'll be narrow enough that I can pass it through the hole in the back there. Now, I really wasn't trying to go down the road of wire tuck, and this isn't really going to be a full-blown wire tuck because I'm still going to run the positive distribution terminals down in the inner fender here. You can see I've already got terminal wired up, plumbed up, and some mounting points. So that's the main fuse for the alternator, and then this is just a main distribution point. And I've started wiring in the relay because we will be running the high torque mini starter where the solenoid is built into the starter. So we in fact don't need to have a big ugly starter solenoid mounted here. So that'll sort of be tucked away nice and neat. Once the battery, so I had to pull the battery tray out and all that good stuff to be able to make some room. So I'll figure out where I need to cut, start fishing some wires through, and then we'll reconnect stuff accordingly and hopefully get this all cleaned up. And then we'll figure out what we need to tap into over here. Similarly back here, pretty sure that this was for some emission stuff on the back. Reached out to Bill Butler and I'm like, dude, send me some wiring diagrams for this stuff. This one is in fact hot, so I think I'm gonna steal this lead to do the electric choke over here so I can run this nice and do some stuff, tuck it all up in there, and it'll be out of the way, and I'll probably get rid of that connector altogether. So there's a little bit of reconfiguration and cleaning up here. It's actually amazing that, you know, this car being carbureted, guys, there is a computer in this car. I don't know what all it'll do or tell you. You can see it's got your OBD1 style connector here. So being an 85, this was low tech, high tech, I call it. So there is a factory computer hiding in that inner kick panel on the passenger side there. And you can see just an array of wires and mesh and everything else. I did get the Fox locks all plumbed in, connected into the connectors here. So hopefully all this stuff works. In fact, you know what? I got it all. Oh, the battery is disconnected now. I had the battery connected. I should have tested that shit out to see if it worked. I'm not even sure if they advertise it for pre-87 cars. So that's where we're at with Eric's car. Lots of wiring. And I was actually hoping to have this thing fired up for him at the end of last week. And then I'm like, dude, I've gone down a wiring rabbit hole. We're going to be delayed about a week because I obviously want to get all that sorted out, get all the sending units, and just pretty much have everything underneath the hood wrapped up in this car. And then I'll worry about firing it up. We'll deal with the exhaust and waiting on the drive shaft to show up from Hanlon. Done all the measurements there, and then it's really just kind of tweaking stuff in the interior. And 417 Fox, Michael Johnson, he's actually sent a prototype kit for the dash so that we can get a double din up where the climate controls used to be and mount our vintage Air 87 through 93 style climate controls down where the radio would have been on this guy. So be sure to stick around because that should be a pretty cool setup as well. If it doesn't make this video, it'll make the next one. All right, so I'm gonna have to chop this and redo that. Good thing I didn't get too far involved here. And then, man, that goes a long way just to kind of plug in and loop back. That's one of the main feeds going into the car. So we'll just unplug that for this moment. So we just need to fish all this stuff. Look at all these fusible links all bundled up here. And then this went to the alternator. This was alternator. That was alternator. It's kind of all the same as the Aero cars. Those colors are pretty much, they never changed. So what I'm thinking is right before this goes solid, thinking I'm gonna cut these wires right here. So these guys will all be taped together, and then these are a bunch of grounds, which I wish I kept the damn connector on there, but I can probably find a better place to, or I'll extend this. I'm gonna go straight to the battery terminal. Maybe that's what I'll do. Give ourselves enough room here. That's a headlight. That's horn. That's a headlight. That's probably a parking light or a fog light. Oh, I did it. There's the brake line. Start feeding through. One fusible link at a time. So now we've got all this to deal with. Look at this contraption. Like, it's not overly heavy, but like, what is that even trying to manage? Like, look at all the solenoids on this. You'd swear this car has air ride. Like, there you go. Front left, front right, rear left, rear right, up, down, side to side. But yeah, no. Emission vacuum control nonsense. I'm sure Mike's gonna love that. 4i Mike. Call him up, get him the factory HVAC box and that crazy vacuum block. So that's cool. I could probably use these is, well, once I get some, I don't know what you would call them, little clips to hold the harness up, like so. And there we go. We'll just run all the wiring over. We'll pop out probably whatever needs to go to the positive terminal. We'll pop out through this hole because the block is right here. This is actually the factory cable that comes on the Godzilla motor. It's not this pretty, but it's got a nice factory boot on the end here. I've put some Alex Tech on it. I'm going to use some heat shrink. So my cell turn heat shrink that they've provided me with, I've used cell turn eyelets or rings on the ends of this cable to build out my cables. So their stuff works really good. You can look them up on Amazon. I can put some links down in the description. They give you all a bunch of different input sizes in terms of gauge of wire, and a bunch of different ring terminal sizes, and of course a variety assortment of the heat shrink that you can use so that you can get a nice finish just like this on your fox body or whatever project you're working on. There we go. Plugged in, and then this is this. Okay. There we go. All right, we'll clean all that up after. All right, so we got all the wiring plugged in over there. So I can in confidence reconnect these 7 wires right here. And then we'll clean up some of this, pass through the hot leads that we need, and our little bit of a wire tuck on this side will be done. '85 is all stripped out on the inside, getting ready for some kill mat, and not going to go too crazy with it. Well, it might end up looking a little crazy, but the main idea is to cover up the spare tire well area here because we're going to be running the JBL Bass Pro hub, powered subwoofer, which I'm a huge fan of. I've got full videos on installing that. And then the soundproofing, which is actually still in the car, amazingly enough, will get folded back and some strips strategically placed on the inside of the panels here, and that'll be just to dampen out some of the tinny, vibration-y noises that these fox bodies are known for. Similarly, we'll get the back sides covered here of the floor pan, and the fronts will probably leave alone just because all of their original sound deadening is in really good shape. If anything, maybe we'll throw on a sheet or two, but nothing too crazy. We'll get some strips on the inner panels of the doors on the back side. Same thing, reduce some of that tinny noise when you're going over bumps and all of the cracks in the road and everything else. But I have to say, these are the cleanest floorboards I have ever seen in a T-top car. Like, they all leak, so they say, but I think it's safe to say that almost no moisture has ever gotten in the car, at least past the carpet and the sound deadener on the underside. Like, these are beautiful. Most people with a solid roof car don't even have floorboards this nice on the inside. So really nice to see that. And once that's all done and we get the carpet shampooed and back in, we'll start messing with cleaning up some of the wiring here from the vintage air that was installed. We got the Fox lock set up over there. In case anyone was wondering, yes, it does work on 4 eyes as well. So door lock actuators are still original to the car, although they work. Those are going to get replaced. And then still need to finish up some of the wiring underneath the hood here. We left off with cleaning up this whole side, and this looks great. Again, all the main positive terminals are available. The fuse for the alternator, everything else bolted down using factory holes in the inner aprons. So no drilling, and just waiting on Bill Butler to get back to me on which wires I need to tap into over here for the oil pressure gauge, water temperature gauge, the tack, and anything else that we might need. So that's it. We'll get this thing kill matted, get subwoofer placed in, remove the headliner as well. So that guy needs to get redone because it wasn't in very good shape. And then all the plastics are gonna have to get prepped out so we can get those resprayed. Got our cans of color coat here from NPD 84 through 86 Mustang charcoal, low luster. So nothing too shiny to go in there. And I wish I knew the color bond equivalent versus the SEM, but we're gonna give this a go. Old Faithful. The weather is finally starting to agree a little bit, enough hopefully that I can get all of Eric's interior re-dyed and refreshened. So everything has been washed with Dawn dish soap and a Scotch pad, so that way you're kind of scuffing and prepping at the same time. And guys, I've gone over this process a million times on the channel, but we're gonna do it here even again today. So again, all of these plastics removed, washed, prepped, cleaned, and then I'm going to do a final prep and then some adhesion promoter, and then we'll do a top coat. And because the interior is going the exact same color, probably won't need too much product. This was all from NPD. I know some of you guys are gonna be like, oh, I thought you said you stopped using SEM products. Well, in this case, NPD has the right, correct color already blended. And I don't know if Color Bond actually has this particular charcoal. They might, but I'm not about to buy a bunch of different grays and try and find out which one is it. So in this case, where something is already made, we are going to stick with it, and we're going to use the process that we've used in the past and had really good success. Now, hopefully the mixed color is going to match. We'll do a small piece of plastic first to make sure that that is in fact the case. So I'll do something like maybe this guy here and make sure that it looks like some of these other plastics. Now you can see, although these plastics are clean, there's some wear and tear and some scuffing from over the years. So a quick coat is going to go a long way here. Then of course we've got a brand new dash pad that is black in color, because I think that was the only option that we got, I think, from Dashes Direct. So that as well has been scrubbed the absolute living shit out of, because it almost comes oily out of its injection molding process. So they'll tell you you need to clean that really, really well before you put any type of top coats on it. So same thing in the back here. You can see some hot spots, probably from the sun, that have kind of just bleached right through the factory coating. You see all along here. So thankfully these plastics aren't cracked or anything like that. Somebody did put those big Yamaha speakers in the back, and you can see I've got some grills here, and these look like factory, but they're actually not. These, big shout out to Mike from M&M Hobbyist Restorations, I believe. They do a lot of OEM stuff. They've done some Celines, a lot of 4i stuff. And Mike's like, man, I got a set of Bronco grills that are a little bit bigger than the factory Fox stuff, and maybe those will work and cover up the butchery that was done behind. And guys, I'm gonna go get a Phillips head screwdriver. We'll take this off so that way you guys can see firsthand just how bad the butchery was. There we go. So you can see where they butchered the hole to get some 6x9s in with their templates. And look at, they got like, it's like every time that cover was off, they drilled a new hole for it. So these Bronco ones are actually two-piece. They kind of sandwich in from the backside, which is nice. And we'll be able to put a factory size, actually we'll upgrade to a 6x8 versus the factory 5x7 back here. Hopefully get some better sound. And most importantly, we're going to be able to keep these factory rear plastics that were in good shape aside from this. And that was like kind of the huge pain point that, you know, I told Eric, I'm like, man, it sucks they butchered your rear plastics, but when there's a will, there's a way. And sometimes you just got to look not too far away to the cousin of a Mustang or a cousin of whatever car you're working on, because typically the OEM doesn't deviate too far away across their different platforms. So in this case, Bronco to the rescue. Speaking about keeping things OEM, here is the factory carpet. Now it's Splish Splash Detailing in yesterday, and they shampooed the living shit out of this thing. And same thing, you can probably still see a little bit of it now. We got some like sun bleaching and some discoloration in a few spots, but the carpet itself is in absolute fantastic shape. So it looks pretty good. And you got to remember, like, usually where the spills happen off the center console, especially in the aero cars, a lot of it happens in places you don't actually see, because right, the console, when you use the emergency brake handle as your cup holder right here, and then it spills, you know, it's usually stained in this vicinity. So although you're never going to see, and I don't even know if the camera's picking this up, it probably makes the carpet look pretty good actually. There's a few spots here, right? A little bit of rust bleeding from the rear seat bolts most likely, but we are going to touch this guy up. And if you guys are wondering, so here's a couple Aero carpets, some 93 Cobra stuff, and these guys were actually stained really bad. So what I do with these, believe it or not, the gray vinyl and fabric paint works really well with this color of the opal gray carpet. And then with the 85 carpet, it's actually a lighter color. So on that one, I've actually got a can of Color Bond. This is called Dove Gray. Of course, you want to make sure that the can is mixed up well. Now guys, this doesn't work if your carpet is seriously stained, but if you got a couple, like you just want to refresh the top of it. So what I do is, that's right, spray the carpet. And you want to do the hatch pattern or a zigzag pattern, and then once you've sprayed, take a brush, work it in, blend it in, and that looks phenomenal. So of course, while I'm doing some prepping and some cleaning and some spraying over there, I'll be doing some work on this carpet as well, and this guy's going to look just as good as factory, and we're not going to have to mess with some aftermarket carpet that isn't molded correctly and is a pain to cut and all of those other things. None of that. If you can keep your OEM carpet, guys, go for it. If the stains are severe, you're going to have to re-dye it, which I've done that on the channel before, so you can go back into the archives and check that out if you like. But I think we're going to be able to save this guy, and it's going to look great. So let's get our final prep on the plastics and get spraying. All right, so we're going to be using the vinyl prep and adhesion promoter on the dash pad, and then we'll be using the stand-free adhesion promoter on all the plastics.
I know you hate to see me coming, but love to see me leave. I know why you never walk in front of me. You tryna check me out, check me out, check me out. Go ahead and check me out, check me out, check me out. I know you hate to see me coming, but love to see me leave. I know why you never walk in front of me. You tryna check me out, check me out, check me out. Go ahead and check me out, check me out, check me out. Yo, a hater stay looking sideways. Big mad when I pull up in the driveway. I stay on a go like a highway. Every day's my birthday, baby, this is my day. Yeah, let's cut the cake with the homemades. We splitting it 5 ways. It's been a long day, thank God it's Friday. We bout to turn up the W's at Dre's. We popping bottles of Remy, graduated from Henny. I'm getting tipsies with gypsies, yeah, they partying with me. We getting litty, the alcohol got us acting silly.
So coat number 1 is done. You can see what I could have done is I could have sprayed a generic gray like with my Color Bond to try and cover that up a little bit better, almost like a primer, so that I don't go too much, or so I don't go through as much as my top coat as much. but that was kind of an afterthought. So I think we'll be okay. And guys, it doesn't take that long, 5-10 minutes in between coats, and you're pretty much good to go. Dries to touch within 10 minutes, but once you're done painting, set the stuff aside. Do not touch it for 24 hours at least. Don't try and install it right away. Let the paint, the dye, whatever you want to call it, do its thing. Then you can go ahead and install. All right, so I've got Eric's cluster apart here, and funny enough, it was actually easier to take apart than I thought it would be. So it was just a number of screws on the perimeter of the cover, and the cover's just kind of more bulky by design than the 87 through 93 cars, because the cluster or the crystal comes out, and then kind of the spacer and everything else. So once you get these numbers of screws out here, or once you get all these screws out, that pops off, and then you actually have access to all the gauges. Now you might be wondering, why is this all apart? Well, two reasons. Number one, his fuel gauge was faulty, and I did a test on it. I can show you guys how I did that a little bit later. But it was the gauge itself. It wasn't the wire, it's not the sending unit, it's none of those things. Just the gauge will not work if you give it any type of voltage. So everything else seems to work fine. He had this one done by ASC McLaren. Yes, they are sort of kind of still in business, I guess, and they will retrofit your 4i speedometer up to 140 mile an hour, which is pretty cool. But the one thing that I'm doing now, you can see I've got this Rust-Oleum Professional Inverted Marking Paint. So the needle on this guy that came out of my parts cluster here, you can see how faded out the needles are. So I needed to make it look as close to new again as possible. Now this paint's maybe a little bit more orange than the factory stuff, but that pretty much looks like new. I can't say much for the font and the coloring on the back side of the face. I know there are vinyl decals that you can get, but I am now going to paint up the rest of these needles so that things look better. One of those jobs, it takes a little bit of patience. So what I did was I snuck this under the needle, dabbed my zip tie with paint, and just kind of use your zip tie as a paintbrush. Like so, and you're done. So, power pack. Override mode. Power is on the left, ground is on the right. Hold that there, hopefully. Boom. You don't need to touch it very long, just enough. Make sure that the gauge moves and works, which it is. That's that. Carrying on with some wiring here, and so this used to be about an 8-pin connector. Some of those pins had 2 wires going into 1 pin, and just some natural Fordisms, but I only need a few of the wires here. That's why some of them are stripped back, some of them are not. This one here that looks like it's tan with red, that's actually white with red. And so that's important because that's our oil pressure, which you can see I've got a brand new sending unit down there with a little pigtail here ready to go. And then there's the mechanical sender in the T. So this is going to go to the gauge that's in the center console. And then this blue wire is going over to the odometer sending unit here, which this guy's going to go to the gauge in the center console. But what I need to do is I need to get a factory style coolant temp sending unit down where that Allen bung is. So that way we can run that to the red with white wire. I believe this blue one is low oil, and then there's the red with green, which that is key on 12 volts, which is going to go to the hot side of our coil. So needless to say, I just want to validate that that is low. So I just want to validate that those gauges will work. So now that the cluster is plugged in and our needles are painted and all that good stuff, I've just run this wire. So that is the white with red. So if I touch this on ground against here, we can see the gauge go up there. So we know that that is in fact the correct wire. So what I'm going to be doing is there's also the tack wire that I'm going to need, which is dark green and yellow. So I'm only grabbing the stuff that I'm going to need, and then I'm going to put in this nice connector onto that, weatherproof with a rubber in there, and then that way we'll have a nice new style connector of just the wires that we need in this case. Now, I could have kept the terminal that was on there, and in fact there was another terminal right here, these two wires that are taped off. That was for the coolant temp sensor, not for the gauge, for the little bit of a computer that is actually in an 85 Mustang, believe it or not. And the best part about this, and Eric's going to be ecstatic, is that the gas gauge did move when I turned the ignition on. So I don't know if it'll kind of go down now with the ignition off. There isn't very much fuel in there. I know that for a fact. I think it's going down. Let's see here. Oh, it's moving. So he's going to be really happy that we have a functional fuel gauge now. Things are coming along nicely in here. We're going to be talking about this doubled-in radio setup soon, and the rest of a bunch of wiring and T-top seals, which have been my nemesis on this project, but as you can see, they are turning out quite nice. It's Monday, back on Eric's 85 here, and managed to get the Base Pro hub hooked up, and for whatever reason there was no remote wire in the main harness. I don't know if it was like a return or someone ripped it out, or sometimes these things are refurbished and they sell them as new. Thankfully I'm pretty clever when it comes to wiring, so I managed to get that sorted out. Wiring's all run. I'd forgot to pull the power cable through the firewall before I put the dash back in, so that was a huge pain in the ass, but managed to get it done. The old coat hanger WD-40 electrical tape trick, and that's all wired up and that's all working. Now, where I left off last Friday was getting the alignment on this head unit dead even so that it fits in the center of this trim plate. Now, I did get a custom 3D printed trim ring here just to make things extra neat and tidy, and the reason for that is because when you cut out this opening and you open it up so that everything lines up, so the climate control is usually like here and there's a vent, or it's the other way around, however it goes, but you have to kind of open it up so that it's straight because it's staggered by default between the vent and the climate control. So it ends up being just a hair too big, and of course you're never going to get like a perfect edge when you're cutting stuff. So this 3D printed ring is kind of the nice final touch for some beautification. So that's all good. LED bulbs throughout the cluster, that's all good. Got the fuel gauge sorted out, you know, with the spare one that I had. Needles all painted and everything looks the part. You can see everything lights up nice and colorful like. So that's all good. Got some Scar 3.5-inch speakers in the front here, and I'm always getting Scar audio adverts. I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna give them a go, and amazingly enough, they sound pretty damn good. So the reality is, with this car, there's no door speakers. So 85, there's no spot to put that door speaker unless you start cutting and opening stuff up, and I didn't want to get into that. I said, Eric, man, let me get some decent speakers. So we got 6x8s now in the rear in those Bronco grills that solved our holes cut too big problem. And with these in the front and that JBL Bass Pro hub sub, guys, the stereo sounds phenomenal. So I think Eric will be more than happy with what's going on there. What else is going on? So yeah, so I just gotta actually pop out this T-roof now. It's been sitting in here long enough. We'll get the A-pillars bolted up into place. I can finally get the trim back on, and I'm gonna go ahead now and just test fit this dash pad that's all cleaned up and painted up, and just see how it fits. Hopefully it fits well, and we're about to find out. So they got tabs. I don't know if you just screw through it or what, but anyways, let's just do a test fit. Yeah guys, I was swearing. I had literally, I kid you not, I bet you have 5 hours into just getting this head unit to fit and to be snug and be centered and be the way that I want it to be. So I guess this is how it fits. I've seen worse. It's a little pushed out over there, but almost looks like we have an interior again. So I'll get going. A-pillars, probably mess a little bit with T-roof trim and whatnot, and then I need to get the coolant temp sensor plumbed in there. I've already started my wiring connector here, so I got to finish this off to get all the appropriate signals for the gauges. I'm still waiting to hear back from CVF about what fitting I need for that power steering pump, so I can create a PTFE line and make it look nice, and I have not heard back yet. Called and went to voicemail, filled out their email form, waiting to hear back. Says there's a live chat feature. Live chat feature didn't work, so we'll see. I sent the message this morning. Let's see how many business days it takes for them to get back to me.